Imagine a night long ago on a dark and stormy sea. Waves crash against a small ship, threatening to swallow it whole beneath their wrath. The sailors, hearts pounding in fear, clutch the rigging, praying for a miracle. Suddenly, a figure appears at the helm, a calm presence in the chaos, guiding the ship to safety. This figure is not just a man, but a symbol of hope and protection, a guardian who has stood watch over sailors for centuries. This is the legend of Saint Nicholas of Myra, a man whose life and legacy ripple through history like the waves he calmed. Known widely as the patron saint of sailors and children, Saint Nicholas's story is a tapestry woven with acts of extraordinary kindness, miraculous intervention, and unwavering faith. But who was this saint behind the stories? What led a humble bishop from a small town in ancient Asia Minor to become one of the most beloved figures in Christian history? And why do his miracles and virtues still inspire millions around the world today? Welcome to Biblescope, where we find light, truth, and purpose in the faith of the saints. Here, Saints of the Church brings you stories of holy lives that still inspire us today. Like the video and subscribe to be strengthened by their witness. Saint Nicholas's story is far more than the jolly figure of Christmas or the red-suited iconography popularized centuries later. His life is a living testimony of divine purpose, a legacy of courage, sacrifice, and unwavering charity that challenges us to look beyond ourselves and see the face of God in those we serve. In this video, we will journey back to the ancient city of Myra, uncovering the history and humanity behind Saint Nicholas. We'll explore the miraculous events that have come to define his legacy, the legends of his secret generosity, the lives he saved, and the enduring love he showed to the vulnerable, especially children and those facing peril at sea. Through vivid storytelling and spiritual reflection, we'll seek to understand how this saint's legacy became a beacon of hope in the darkest of times, how his example invites us to a deeper faith, and why his patronage over sailors and children holds a timeless significance in the Christian tradition. But this story is not just history. It's a call to embody the same spirit of faith and generosity that Saint Nicholas lived by. What sacrifices did he make? How did he serve God and his people in ways that transcended his own time? And how can we, in our own lives, follow his example to bring light and hope to a world in need? Stay with us till the end of the video for inspiring insights and spiritual lessons that can transform your walk with God. Now, let's embark on this journey into the life and legacy of Saint Nicholas of Myra. Saint Nicholas was born in the ancient city of Patron, near Myra in Lycia, around the 3rd century. From an early age, Nicholas was known for his piety, kindness, and a heart tender to the plight of others. But his story quickly moves beyond the simple biography of a devout young man. It moves into the realm of mystery and miracle, where faith meets divine intervention. Why is it that centuries after his death, Saint Nicholas's influence still echoes across continents? Why do sailors still invoke his protection when venturing into stormy seas? Why is he celebrated as the protector of children, inspiring traditions that culminate in the joyful giving of gifts during Christmas? These questions invite us to look deeper, not just at the man, but at what he represents, a living example of God's love made manifest in the world. His life challenges us to ask ourselves, how can faith be lived out in acts of radical love? How can one life touch countless others, spanning time and culture? At the heart of the legend is a bishop who lived in turbulent times. Myra, located in present-day Turkey, was part of the Roman Empire and later the Byzantine world, a place of political unrest, paganism, and the early struggles of Christianity. Nicholas was known not only for his role as bishop, but for his relentless compassion toward the poor and oppressed. He was a man who gave generously and secretly, slipping coins into the shoes of those in need, providing dowries to impoverished girls to save them from lives of hardship, and intervening on behalf of the innocent. His acts were never done for recognition, but out of genuine love and obedience to God's call. Saint Nicholas once said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." This simple truth became the guiding principle of his life. His generosity was not just charity, but a testimony of faith in action, a living sermon to the power of love. Two roles dominate Saint Nicholas's legacy: protector of sailors and guardian of children. But why these roles? For sailors, Nicholas's story carries deep spiritual significance. Many accounts tell of how he miraculously saved ships caught in violent storms, calming the seas and guiding them safely home. These miracles earned him the title Protector of Seafarers, and his name became synonymous with hope and safety for those who risked their lives at sea. As for children, the story of Nicholas brings forth miracles of resurrection and gift-giving. The tale of the three children, whom he is said to have restored to life after they were tragically lost, highlights his compassion for the innocent and vulnerable. This miracle, combined with his secret acts of generosity toward poor children, laid the groundwork for the joyful Christmas traditions inspired by his legacy. Beyond the stories and miracles lies the enduring impact of Saint Nicholas's life, a legacy that has inspired countless believers to faithfulness and charity. His story crosses borders and centuries, shaping not only religious traditions, but the very spirit of giving and kindness that defines so much of the Christian faith today. His feast day, celebrated on December 6th, remains a day of reflection, generosity, and spiritual renewal for many around the world. So, as we begin our journey through the remarkable life of Saint Nicholas of Myra, ask yourself, what part of his story will speak to your heart? How might his example inspire you to act with courage, kindness, and unwavering faith in your own life? Welcome to Biblescope. Stay with us, and together, let us find light, truth, and purpose in the faith of the saints. To truly understand the legacy of Saint Nicholas of Myra, we must first step back into the world in which he lived, a world both distant and yet surprisingly familiar to us today. The ancient city of Myra, located in what is now modern-day Demre, Turkey, was part of the Roman province of Lycia. It was a place of rugged coastlines, bustling ports, and a crossroads of cultures where East met West. But it was also a world marked by political turmoil, social unrest, and the dangerous beginnings of Christianity. Nicholas was born around the year 270 AD into a wealthy Christian family. His parents, Nikolaus and Theophanes, were known in the community for their deep faith and generosity. From his earliest years, Nicholas was immersed in the teachings of the Christian faith. It is said that even as a child, he was moved by compassion for the poor and a desire to serve God in a way that went beyond mere words. Imagine young Nicholas walking the streets of Myra, watching the poor struggle to survive, the widows with their empty hands, and the orphans searching for hope. It was in this environment that his heart was shaped, not just by the comforts of his family's wealth, but by the call to give generously and serve selflessly. But life in the Roman Empire was not easy for Christians. At this time, the church was still young, and believers often faced persecution and hostility. Emperors like Decius and Diocletian sought to suppress Christianity, demanding that followers renounce their faith or face imprisonment, torture, or even death. This context is vital because it highlights the courage it took for Nicholas to remain steadfast. Despite these challenges, Nicholas's faith only deepened. The young man's spiritual devotion was not only personal, but also public. He was known for his humility and fervor, qualities that set him apart in a city where pagan temples and Roman authority were dominant. When Nicholas's parents passed away, he inherited their wealth. But instead of keeping it for himself, Nicholas resolved to use it to help those in need. There is a powerful lesson here. His faith was not theoretical. It was practical and sacrificial. He gave away his inheritance quietly, without seeking praise or recognition, embodying the biblical teaching that it is more blessed to give than to receive. It is this radical generosity that eventually led to his rise in the church. The people of Myra recognized Nicholas's holiness and leadership, and he was appointed bishop at a young age. As bishop, Nicholas embraced his calling with a servant's heart. He did not seek power or prestige, but saw himself as a guardian of his flock, especially the most vulnerable. As bishop, Nicholas confronted injustice boldly. One of the earliest stories about him tells of how he defended 3 young women who faced a grim fate. In those days, daughters often depended on their family's dowry to marry honorably. Without a dowry, their futures were bleak, and some were forced into lives of desperation. Hearing of this, Nicholas secretly provided gold for their dowries, saving them from dishonor. This act of secret charity set the tone for his ministry. Generosity without fanfare, love without limits. Nicholas's courage extended beyond charity. When faced with corrupt officials or rulers who threatened his people, he spoke out. Tradition holds that during the persecution of Christians, Nicholas was imprisoned and even beaten for his faith. Yet he endured, strengthened by his unwavering trust in God. His life was a testament to humility, courage, and sacrificial service, qualities that define true Christian leadership. His story invites us to reflect. When faith calls us to sacrifice, how do we respond? Do we cling to comfort? Or do we step forward with courage to serve others, even at personal cost? Nicholas's example challenges us to ask difficult questions about our own lives. How do we use the resources and talents God has given us? Are we willing to give generously, even in ways that require personal sacrifice? His life reminds us that holiness is not reserved for the extraordinary alone, but is lived out in everyday acts of kindness and justice. Through the story of Saint Nicholas, we see that faith is not passive. It demands action, a heart ready to serve, and a spirit willing to endure hardship for the sake of others. This is the heart of Christian discipleship. One of the most powerful teachings attributed to Saint Nicholas is his emphasis on charity and love as the essence of Christian life. He once said, "Let us remember that the greatest miracle is not in the wonders we perform, but in the love we show to one another." This simple yet profound statement captures the essence of his ministry. Miracles may capture our imagination, but it is love expressed in tangible ways that transforms lives and communities. Nicholas's life was a series of such miracles. Not just divine interventions, but the miracle of generosity, courage, and compassion lived daily. Nicholas's early years teach us several important lessons. First, that true faith is deeply connected to humility. Nicholas did not seek status or recognition. He served quietly and faithfully. Second, that courage is essential in the Christian life. Living in a time of persecution, Nicholas chose to stand firm rather than hide his faith. Third, that service to the vulnerable is at the heart of holiness. Nicholas's commitment to the poor and powerless shows us the path of Christian love. These lessons invite us to examine our own faith journey. How do we respond when called to serve? How do we stand in times of trial? And how do we embody love in practical ways? As we reflect on the man behind the legend, I invite you to pause and ask yourself, when faith calls you to sacrifice, to stand for justice, or to serve the vulnerable, how do you respond? Are you ready to follow the example of Saint Nicholas, who gave generously and stood courageously in the face of adversity? Your journey with faith is your own, but the stories of saints like Nicholas remind us that we are never alone. Their lives light the way, inspiring us to live boldly for God's kingdom. The life of Saint Nicholas of Myra is alive with stories that have transcended centuries. Tales of miracles and acts of charity so powerful that they shaped not only his legacy, but the faith of millions around the world. These stories invite us to step into moments where divine grace intersected with human need, where faith became action, and God's power was revealed through a humble servant. Let us journey now into these remarkable episodes, exploring the miracle of the storm-tossed sailors, the secret gift of dowries to desperate daughters, and the resurrection of 3 children, each story a vivid portrait of God's love in action. Picture this. A small wooden ship, laden with precious cargo, is caught in the middle of a furious storm on the Mediterranean Sea. The sky is dark and angry, the waves crashing higher than ever before. The sailors, weather-beaten and weary, grip the rigging, eyes wide with fear, hearts pounding with the knowledge that one wrong move could send them plunging to their doom. As thunder roars and lightning splits the sky, they cry out in desperation, not to the sea gods, as their pagan neighbors might, but to a different name, whispered with hope and faith, Saint Nicholas. According to tradition, Nicholas appeared in the midst of the storm, not as a distant figure, but as a visible, tangible presence, guiding the ship with calm assurance. His prayers and blessing were said to have stilled the winds and tamed the raging sea, bringing the sailors safely to shore. This miracle is more than just a story of supernatural intervention. It reveals the heart of Nicholas's ministry, a ministry rooted in the conviction that God is the protector of those in peril, and that through faith, the impossible becomes possible. For centuries, sailors have invoked Saint Nicholas's protection, trusting in his intercession to calm the storms of life, both literal and metaphorical. His role as the guardian of the sea speaks to a deeper spiritual truth. No matter how fierce the storm, God's hand is steady and his love unfailing. Now, let us shift to a quieter but no less dramatic scene, one that unfolds in the shadows, away from public view, but with consequences that echo through time. In the ancient world, a young woman's future often hinged on her family's ability to provide a dowry, a gift or money given to secure a good marriage. Without it, many faced destitution or worse. Nicholas, moved by compassion, learned of 3 impoverished sisters whose prospects were bleak. Rather than wait for their plight to worsen, he resolved to act, but with discretion. Late at night, he secretly delivered bags of gold through their window, enough to provide a dowry for each sister. This act of secret charity is more than a legend. It is a testament to the power of humility and love. Nicholas did not seek glory or praise for his generosity. Instead, he gave quietly, modeling the biblical call to give without letting the left hand know what the right hand is doing. The story of the dowries teaches us that true charity is selfless and discreet. It challenges us to examine our own hearts. Do we give for recognition, or do we give to genuinely meet the needs of others? Perhaps the most dramatic and haunting of Nicholas's miracles is the tale of the resurrection of 3 children. This story, filled with both tragedy and hope, speaks deeply to his role as protector of the innocent. According to the legend, during a time of famine, a wicked innkeeper lured 3 children into his home, only to murder them in a terrible act of cruelty. The community was devastated, and the children's families mourned their loss with broken hearts. But Nicholas, moved by divine compassion, prayed fervently. By God's grace, the children were restored to life, a miracle that echoed the power of resurrection itself, a sign that death and evil do not have the final word. This story carries profound spiritual meaning. It symbolizes hope in the face of despair and the victory of life over death. It also reveals the saint's fierce love for children, his willingness to intercede on their behalf, and his deep trust in God's power to heal and restore. What do these stories reveal beyond their surface miracles? They show us a faith lived boldly, a faith that moves beyond belief into courageous action. Saint Nicholas was not a passive observer of suffering. He engaged with it, intervened, and acted as an instrument of God's providence. His miracles were not magic tricks, but manifestations of a life fully surrendered to God's will. In the storm, we see trust that God can calm even the most violent chaos. In the secret dowries, we see generosity that transforms lives without seeking fame. In the resurrection, we see hope that conquers death itself. Each story is a mirror, inviting us to ask, how do we live out our faith? Are we willing to trust God in our storms? Are we willing to give quietly and generously? Do we believe in the power of God to bring restoration, even in the darkest moments? As you hear these stories, which one touches your heart most deeply? Is it the courage in the storm, the quiet love in the secret gift, or the hope in resurrection? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's reflect together on how Saint Nicholas's legacy can inspire us to live with trust, generosity, and hope today. These miracles and acts of charity reveal a saint whose life was a living testimony of God's love, courage, and power. In the next section, we will explore how Saint Nicholas's legacy grew beyond his lifetime, inspiring cultures, traditions, and faith journeys across the world. Saint Nicholas's legacy is unique, not only because of his profound faith and miracles, but because of the roles he came to embody as protector and guardian, especially for sailors and children. But why these particular roles? How did a bishop from the ancient city of Myra become known as the patron saint of those who sail the vast, unpredictable seas and the innocent, vulnerable children? To answer this, we must delve deeper into the symbolism, historical context, and spiritual significance behind these powerful patronages. From the earliest days after his death, sailors have looked to Saint Nicholas for protection. Why? It begins with the geography of Myra itself. Nestled on the rugged coast of the Mediterranean, Myra was a busy port city, a hub for merchants, fishermen, and travelers who relied on the sea for their livelihoods. The sea, while a source of wealth, was also a place of great danger. Storms could rise suddenly, ships could be lost to treacherous waves, and sailors often faced death on the water. The story of Saint Nicholas calming the storm, appearing to rescue sailors in peril, made a lasting impression on maritime communities. His name became synonymous with divine protection over those who brave the sea's dangers. Over time, fishermen, sailors, and travelers invoked Saint Nicholas's intercession as a source of comfort and hope. Imagine the scene on a wooden ship in the 4th century. A violent storm thrashes the vessel, waves tower overhead, and the sailors, fearing death, call out in prayer to the saint whose miracles they had heard whispered in ports far and wide. His name was their anchor in the storm, a reminder that God's power could still the chaos and bring safety. Historical records reveal that during the Middle Ages, many seafaring guilds, sailors' fraternities, and even naval expeditions adopted Saint Nicholas as their patron. In ports from Venice to Amsterdam, chapels and altars were dedicated to him, and ships were blessed in his name before setting sail. His role as protector of sailors embodies more than physical safety. It symbolizes guidance and faith through the uncertain journeys of life. Just as sailors depend on stars and compasses, Christians look to saints like Nicholas as spiritual guides, interceding and protecting us as we navigate the storms we face, be they literal or spiritual. Equally significant is Saint Nicholas's role as the guardian of children. This patronage stems directly from the stories of his tender care and miraculous intervention on behalf of the most vulnerable. The ancient world was often harsh for children. Many were orphaned, abandoned, or left defenseless against exploitation and cruelty. Nicholas's miraculous resurrection of the 3 murdered children became a powerful emblem of his protective care. He was not just a distant figure of authority. He was a fierce defender of innocence and life. The story of his secret gifts, especially the dowries for impoverished young women, also speaks to his concern for children's futures. He sought to ensure that these young women could marry honorably, safeguarding their dignity and well-being. Over centuries, this protective love for children blossomed into a broader spiritual symbol. In many Christian cultures, Saint Nicholas came to be seen as a heavenly guardian, especially during the Christmas season when the celebration of Jesus' birth highlighted the value and joy of children. This connection evolved over time, blending with local customs to inspire the beloved traditions of gift-giving and kindness to children. The figure of Saint Nicholas inspired the image of a generous, joyful gift-bringer, planting the seeds for what would later become the modern-day figure of Santa Claus. But beyond folklore, the spiritual truth remains. Saint Nicholas exemplifies the Christian call to protect and cherish the innocent, to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. Both roles, patron of sailors and children, are deeply symbolic. They represent facets of God's care for humanity. The sailor's journey is a metaphor for the spiritual voyage of life, full of unknowns, risks, and moments of crisis. Just as sailors need a steadfast guide and protector on their perilous routes, so too do we all need spiritual guardians who intercede for us and point us towards safe harbor in God. Children symbolize purity, hope, and the future. Protecting children means safeguarding what is most precious and fragile in society. Saint Nicholas's devotion to children reveals God's heart for the least and the vulnerable, teaching us to embody that same care in our daily lives. His patronage reminds us that holiness is not abstract. It is deeply practical, rooted in protection, compassion, and guidance. Why do saints continue to hold such an important place in Christian life? What does it mean for us today to have figures like Saint Nicholas as spiritual guardians? Saints are more than historical figures or distant role models. They're living witnesses to the power of God's grace at work in human lives. They remind us that faith is active and relational. Having a saint as a protector means having someone who understands our struggles and intercedes for us before God. It is a source of comfort to know we are not alone, that the heroes of faith who have gone before us are watching, praying, and guiding. In a world filled with uncertainty and challenges, this spiritual connection gives believers courage and hope. It invites us to grow in our own faith journey, inspired by those who lived with unwavering trust in God. The devotion to Saint Nicholas among sailors has left a rich tapestry of stories and traditions. One such story comes from medieval Europe. A fleet preparing for a dangerous voyage held a solemn ceremony, praying to Saint Nicholas for safe passage. During the journey, a fierce storm arose, and the sailors prayed earnestly. Miraculously, the storm subsided, and the fleet reached its destination safely. In gratitude, they vowed to honor Saint Nicholas annually with feasts and prayers. In other ports, sailors would carry small icons of Saint Nicholas aboard ships or wear medallions bearing his image. Before every voyage, they would seek his blessing, believing his protection was essential for survival. These customs spread throughout Europe and beyond, embedding Saint Nicholas deeply in maritime culture and devotion. As we consider Saint Nicholas's role as a protector, we are invited to reflect personally. Do you have a saint you feel especially close to? Someone whose story encourages you, whose example inspires you to live with courage and love? Why does their life speak to your heart? Saint Nicholas's story encourages us to seek and embrace the spiritual guardians in our own lives, to draw strength from their witness and intercession. The patronage of Saint Nicholas over sailors and children is not merely a historical curiosity. It is a living, breathing reality for many believers worldwide. His protection over sailors symbolizes God's steadfast presence in our life's journeys, especially when we face danger or uncertainty. His care for children reflects the call to defend innocence, nurture hope, and live out love in practical ways. Together, these roles reveal a saint whose legacy is one of courage, compassion, and divine care. The story of Saint Nicholas began in the ancient city of Myra, nestled in the rugged landscape of what is now modern-day Turkey. But his life and legacy did not remain confined to that distant corner of the world. Instead, they grew, spread, and transformed, crossing borders, cultures, and centuries to become a source of inspiration that still beats strongly in the hearts of millions today. Let us trace this incredible journey of Saint Nicholas's enduring influence, a legacy that bridges the ancient with the modern, the miraculous with the everyday, and the sacred with the familiar. After Saint Nicholas's death in the 4th century, his tomb in Myra became a site of pilgrimage. The faithful traveled great distances, drawn by tales of his miracles and the holiness of his life. His reputation as a protector and miracle worker grew steadily, spreading through the Christian communities of the Byzantine Empire and beyond. By the Middle Ages, devotion to Saint Nicholas had become widespread across Europe. He was venerated in places as diverse as Italy, France, Germany, Russia, and the British Isles. Each culture embraced him uniquely, weaving local traditions and customs into the tapestry of his veneration. One fascinating chapter of this legacy took place in the 11th century when the relics of Saint Nicholas were moved, some say rescued, from Myra to the Italian city of Bari. This event was celebrated with great joy and became a catalyst for even wider devotion throughout Western Europe. From that point on, churches, cathedrals, and monasteries were dedicated to Saint Nicholas. He became known as a universal saint, beloved not only for his miracles, but also for his embodiment of Christian virtues, generosity, humility, and unwavering faith. Saint Nicholas's feast day, celebrated on December 6th, became one of the most beloved feast days of the Christian calendar. This day commemorates the anniversary of his death and honors his legacy of giving and protection. In many cultures, December 6th was marked by special church services, acts of charity, and the giving of gifts, particularly to children. It was a day when stories of Saint Nicholas's secret dowries and miracles were retold, inspiring generosity and kindness. Over time, these traditions became intertwined with the celebration of Christmas, especially in Northern Europe. The spirit of Saint Nicholas, his love for children, his joy in giving, and his role as a protector, began to influence the emerging customs surrounding the birth of Christ. This blending gave rise to the figure of Sinterklaas in the Netherlands, Santa Claus in English-speaking countries, and similar beloved gift-bringers in other cultures. While the modern image of Santa Claus, with his red suit and jolly laugh, has been shaped by many influences, the heart of this figure remains rooted in the legacy of Saint Nicholas. More importantly, the true spirit behind these celebrations, the call to generosity, care for the vulnerable, and joyful giving, echoes the very life that Saint Nicholas lived. Beyond the traditions and celebrations, Saint Nicholas's greatest gift to the Church is the spiritual legacy of his life. His story teaches us that generosity is not just about giving wealth, but about sacrificial love, giving even when it costs us something. Nicholas gave secretly, humbly, and without expectation of reward. This teaches us to give with pure hearts, reflecting God's unconditional love. His faithfulness as a bishop, courageously standing for justice, protecting the vulnerable, and serving with humility, reminds us of the call to live out our faith boldly in the world. In times of trial, Nicholas did not retreat, but stood firm, trusting God's providence and acting with compassion. His courage challenges us to face our own struggles with the same trust and resolve. Through these lessons, Saint Nicholas becomes not only a figure of history, but a living example for each believer, a model of what it means to follow Christ faithfully and lovingly. Saint Nicholas's influence continues in the lives of countless people today. Across the world, individuals and communities draw inspiration from his example, embodying his spirit through acts of kindness, protection, and generosity. Charitable organizations inspired by Saint Nicholas's legacy work tirelessly to aid children in poverty, refugees in need, and those facing life storms. In some coastal towns, sailors still hold ceremonies invoking his protection before embarking on voyages. Moreover, families gather annually on his feast day to tell his stories, pass down traditions, and inspire the next generation to live lives of faith and service. Even outside explicitly religious settings, the figure of Saint Nicholas, embodied in Santa Claus, reminds us all of the joy of giving and the importance of caring for others. As we reflect on Saint Nicholas's enduring legacy, we are invited to consider how his story might inspire our own spiritual journeys. How can we embody his generosity in our own lives? In what ways can we stand courageously for the vulnerable and the marginalized? How might we trust God more deeply, even in the storms we face? Saint Nicholas's life is a call to action and reflection, a reminder that holiness is possible and that each of us can be a vessel of God's love and power in the world. Saint Nicholas's journey from a humble bishop in Myra to a beloved saint across the globe reminds us that true faith leaves a lasting imprint. It shapes culture, traditions, and hearts. His legacy is not just a memory of the past, but a living challenge to love generously, serve faithfully, and face life's storms with courage. As our journey through the life and legacy of Saint Nicholas draws to a close, we are left with a profound sense of awe and inspiration. Here was a man, a humble bishop from an ancient city, whose faith blazed so brightly that his story has transcended centuries, cultures, and continents. His life is a beacon, shining with holy sacrifice, miraculous faith, and loving service. It calls to us across the ages, inviting us to live with the same courage, generosity, and trust in God. St. Nicholas's story is not simply a tale from the past to admire from afar. It is a living testimony that holiness is attainable, that faith can move mountains, and that love can transform lives. In every chapter, from his early years in Myra, his fearless leadership amid persecution, to the miracles that shaped his reputation as a protector, St. Nicholas offers us a blueprint for how to follow Christ with courage and compassion. What stands out most in St. Nicholas's life is his radical commitment to serving others, especially the poor, the vulnerable, and those in danger. His was a faith that did not shrink from sacrifice. Instead, it embraced suffering as a path to holiness. He gave generously, often in secret, not seeking recognition, but acting out of pure love. His miracles remind us that God's power is made perfect in weakness, and that divine intervention often flows through the willing hearts of those who trust Him. His protection of sailors in stormy seas is a vivid metaphor for the storms we face in life, reminding us that faith can be an anchor when all else feels uncertain. And perhaps most touching is his care for children, a tender reminder that holiness involves protecting and nurturing the innocent and the future. St. Nicholas's legacy challenges us to embody these virtues in our own lives, to love sacrificially, to act courageously, and to trust faithfully in God's providence. As we stand in the light of St. Nicholas's witness, the question before us is this: how will his life inspire our own journey of faith? What does it mean to live generously today? It could be as simple as offering time and kindness to someone in need, or as bold as standing up for justice in a world that often seems indifferent. How might we face our own storms with courage and trust, knowing that God's protection is near? And how can we, like Nicholas, become protectors and champions for the vulnerable in our communities, whether they're children, the poor, or anyone in need of care? These are not easy questions, but they are essential. St. Nicholas's example invites us to move from passive admiration to active discipleship. Now, dear viewer, I want to hear from you. What part of St. Nicholas's story calls to your heart today? Is it his selfless generosity, his miraculous faith, or his fierce protection of those in danger? How might his example inspire your faith journey? Is there a way you feel called to step out in courage or kindness, even in small ways? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Let's build a community inspired by the saints, learning from their witness, and encouraging one another to live boldly for Christ. Saint Nicholas is one among many heroes of the faith who remind us that holiness is possible and powerful. Their lives show us what faith lived fully can look like: a life marked by sacrifice, love, and unwavering trust in God's plan. If St. Nicholas's story has inspired you, if it has kindled a flame of hope or courage within your heart, then join us here at Biblescope. Like this video and subscribe to our channel to walk with more saints and heroes of the faith. Together, we can be strengthened by their witness, encouraged in our spiritual journeys, and inspired to live lives that shine God's light into the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the remarkable life of St. Nicholas. May his legacy continue to inspire you to live with generosity, courage, and deep faith.